The morning air inside the office was busy and full of chatter. Phones rang, printers hummed, and people rushed around carrying files and coffee cups. It was a normal day except for one thing. A new employee had just joined the team. He walked in quietly, holding his small folder and a nervous smile. He looked simple, dressed neatly but not in expensive clothes. His eyes showed both excitement and worry, as if he wasn't sure if he truly belonged there. The manager introduced him to the staff and assigned him a desk near the back. Everyone nodded politely, but after the introduction, most people went back to their work without much interest. The office already had its circles and groups, and newcomers often needed time to fit in. The young man worked quietly, asking questions whenever he needed help. He wanted to learn things the right way, but not everyone liked his slow and careful style. One of the senior employees, a confident woman who had been in the company for years, often found him amusing. She had a habit of teasing people lightly, but her words sometimes carried a sting. When she saw him struggling to find a file or typing slowly, she would laugh softly and make a comment that others could hear. "Looks like we'll be here all day if he's the one sending the reports," she'd say, smirking as her friends giggled. At first, he thought maybe she was just joking, but after a few days, it became clear that she didn't take him seriously. Every mistake he made became something for her to laugh about. Sometimes when he asked her for help, she would reply in a sarcastic tone, "You really don't know this? I thought you studied before joining here." He would smile awkwardly and thank her anyway, then go back to his desk and figure things out on his own. The teasing spread around slowly, and a few others started copying her tone. He wasn't bullied openly, but the small laughs and comments were enough to make him feel like an outsider. He tried not to show it. Instead, he kept working hard. He stayed late, checking files and learning the system better. He watched how others worked, took notes quietly, and read company documents that others ignored. He didn't want to prove anything to anyone. He just wanted to do his job well and make his family proud. One evening, when most of the office had left, he was still sitting there, reading through an old project file. The cleaner walked past and asked softly, "You're still here? You'll miss the last bus." He smiled and said, "It's okay. I'll manage." That night, as he walked home on the empty street, he thought about the people at work. He didn't hate them. He just wished they saw him differently. Deep down, he promised himself something. He would not let their laughter define him. He would learn, grow, and earn his respect through his work, not his words. The next morning when he came in, the same woman who mocked him was already at her desk. She was busy talking to a few colleagues, joking about how the new guy might forget his login password again. He heard her but didn't react. He just smiled politely and started his work. Over time, he became known for something no one expected: his patience. Whenever there was a mistake or confusion, he didn't get angry or defensive. He calmly looked for a solution. Even when that same woman teased him, he treated her with respect. His calmness started to bother her a little. She didn't understand how he could stay so quiet all the time. One day, she made a big mistake in one of her reports and had to stay late fixing it. The new employee noticed her struggling. Though she never treated him kindly, he still offered to help. "If you'd like, I can check the data for you," he said softly. She gave him a surprised look, paused, then reluctantly said, "Fine." Together, they finished the task faster than she expected. She didn't thank him, but deep inside, she felt a small pinch of guilt. But the next day, everything went back to normal. She continued teasing him, and he continued working silently. The rest of the office noticed how hardworking he was, but no one spoke up. People often go along with what the loudest voices say, and in this office, her voice was the loudest. As weeks turned into months, small changes began to show. He learned the system better than many of the seniors. He started handling small tasks that others didn't want to do, and he did them perfectly. His reports were always neat, his updates always on time. His dedication started catching the attention of the upper management, though he didn't know it yet. One afternoon, while everyone was in the meeting room, the manager mentioned how one of the newer staff had shown great consistency and improvement. Everyone looked around, wondering who it could be. When the manager said his name, there was a moment of silence. A few people looked surprised, and that woman shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She forced a smile and clapped along with the others, but her mind was elsewhere. After the meeting, she walked past him and said, "Looks like the boss is really impressed with you." "Good for you," Her voice was polite, but her eyes showed something different, maybe pride, maybe irritation. He simply nodded and thanked her. Over the next few months, he kept growing. He started coming up with small ideas to improve work efficiency. Some of his suggestions were actually used, and that made him even more motivated. The same people who once ignored him now came to him for small bits of advice. He always helped them kindly, never mentioning the way they had treated him before. The woman who used to laugh at him started feeling a strange mix of emotions. She still saw him as the quiet, simple guy who once made silly mistakes. But she couldn't ignore the fact that he was now doing better than most. Sometimes she caught herself watching him work, noticing how focused he was. It bothered her that she couldn't understand how someone she used to mock had become so steady and confident. One evening, when the manager asked for volunteers to stay late and complete an urgent report, no one raised their hand. People wanted to go home early. The manager looked disappointed. That's when the young man spoke up. "I can stay and finish it, sir." The manager smiled and thanked him. The woman glanced at him and muttered to herself, "He's just trying to impress people." But deep down, she knew it wasn't about that. He genuinely cared about his work. When the report was submitted the next morning, the manager praised him again. Slowly, he began earning real respect in the office, not because he demanded it, but because he worked for it. The woman, however, felt her position slipping. She had been in the company longer, but lately, her performance had been average. She didn't want to admit it, but the newcomer she once mocked had outperformed her. Despite this, he never changed. He still greeted everyone with the same gentle smile, helped others when they were stuck, and stayed humble. People began to notice that kindness in him, something that stood out in a workplace filled with ego and competition. One Friday afternoon, as everyone prepared to leave, the woman accidentally dropped her coffee cup near her desk, spilling it over some papers. Everyone around chuckled lightly, just as she used to when he made small mistakes. For a brief moment, she felt embarrassed, like the tables had turned. Before she could say anything, he walked over with some tissues, helped her clean the mess, and said quietly, "It's okay. Accidents happen." His tone was calm, just like always. She froze for a moment. Something inside her shifted. For the first time, she realized how he must have felt back then, embarrassed, small, and alone. But unlike her, he had chosen kindness instead of laughter. That night, as she locked her desk and left the office, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She didn't know that this was just the beginning, that the same person she once made fun of would one day be sitting in the seat she dreamed of. Life had already started turning, quietly and slowly, just like the man who never stopped believing in himself. Weeks turned into months, and the office started to change in quiet ways. The young man had settled into his role, though he still kept mostly to himself. He was no longer the new face everyone ignored. His name was mentioned in small meetings, and his work started getting noticed by the higher-ups. He had built a rhythm: come early, work carefully, help others when asked, and leave only after finishing what needed to be done. But not everything was easy. The woman who had once laughed at him continued to make small comments now and then, but they had lost their power. She was starting to see how people looked at him differently. He wasn't the unsure, nervous newcomer anymore. He was becoming the person others trusted when things went wrong. Still, something about him annoyed her. She couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way he stayed calm no matter what happened, or maybe it was how his work kept improving, while hers stayed the same. She had been with the company for years, and now this quiet man was being mentioned in management's weekly updates. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was more confusion. She had built her image around being confident, smart, and respected. Yet now, the person she used to tease was being seen as the future of the department. One morning, the office was tense. The manager had called everyone for an urgent meeting. A big project had gone wrong, and several mistakes had been found in the reports. The client was unhappy, and the boss wanted answers. The woman realized with a heavy heart that some of those errors had come from her part of the work. Her hands trembled slightly as the manager spoke. The young man sat across the table, quietly listening. He didn't say a word, just took notes as the boss explained the issues. After the meeting, everyone went back to their desks, worried about what would happen next. The woman sat still, staring at her computer screen. She wanted to fix things, but she didn't know where to start. Then she heard a gentle voice beside her. "I looked at the report," he said softly. I think I can help you find what went wrong. She looked up a bit surprised. For a moment, pride made her want to refuse, but something in his calm tone made her nod. Fine, she said quietly. Let's see what you've got. They worked together for hours, going through numbers and charts. He explained each error carefully, never once making her feel small. When they finally found the main issue, he helped her correct it and even prepared a clean version to send back to the client. When it was over, she exhaled and leaned back in her chair. Thanks, she said quietly. He just smiled and replied, We're on the same team. That's what matters. That night, as she packed her things, she couldn't stop thinking about it.
He had every reason to remind her of how she used to laugh at him.
But he didn't. He had shown her respect she hadn't given him in the past. From that day, she started to see him differently. She didn't say it out loud, but she began observing him more closely. She noticed how he treated everyone equally, from the receptionist to the senior staff. When someone made a mistake, he helped them fix it instead of blaming them. When someone was under pressure, he quietly supported them. It was hard for her to admit, but he was earning real respect not through charm or words, but through character. Weeks later, a memo arrived announcing that the company would soon begin a new leadership development program. It was meant for employees who showed potential to move into management roles. The woman immediately decided to apply. She had been waiting for such an opportunity for years. To her surprise, the young man also applied. When she saw his name on the list, something inside her tightened. She couldn't help but think, what if he gets selected and I don't? She tried to laugh the thought off, but it stayed with her all day. A few weeks later, everyone gathered in the conference room as the results were announced. The manager read the names slowly. Her heart beat faster with each one. Then came the moment she didn't expect. The young man's name was announced. He had been chosen for the leadership program. The room went quiet for a moment. Then people clapped. Some looked surprised, others nodded in agreement. When her name wasn't mentioned, she forced a smile, pretending it didn't bother her. But inside she felt something she hadn't felt in years: defeat. That evening she sat at her desk after everyone left, staring at the glowing screen. She thought about how she used to laugh at him, how sure she had been that he would never rise above her. Yet here she was, feeling smaller than ever. The next few weeks were strange for her. She tried to act normal, but she couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that things were changing faster than she could handle. The young man went away for training sessions, and when he returned, there was a new confidence in him. Not arrogance, just calm assurance. People respected him even more now. He had started leading small meetings, guiding others on projects. Even the manager often asked for his opinion. The woman tried to avoid looking at him during discussions, afraid her expression would give away how uncomfortable she felt. But he didn't change toward her. Whenever they spoke, he was polite, patient, and respectful. That made it even harder for her to deal with the guilt that had started building inside. One day, while they were working on a shared project, she snapped at him out of frustration. "You think you're better than everyone now, don't you?" she said sharply. The room fell silent for a second. He looked at her, not angry but calm. "No," he said softly. "I just think we all have something to learn, no matter how long we've been here." Her words hung in the air long after he left the room. She sat there feeling embarrassed. She knew he was right. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped learning and started comparing. The following week, a big presentation was scheduled. The manager asked her to lead it, but she panicked. It had been a while since she had done anything like that, and her confidence had faded. Surprisingly, the young man offered to help her prepare. "We can go through it together," he said kindly. "You'll do fine." They spent 2 evenings practicing after hours. He gave her feedback, helped organize her slides, and encouraged her when she stumbled. On the day of the presentation, she delivered it perfectly. Everyone applauded, and even the manager complimented her. After the meeting, she looked at him with genuine gratitude. "You didn't have to help me," she said. He smiled. "We succeed when the team succeeds," he replied simply. That night, she walked home with a lighter heart. For the first time in months, she felt at peace. She realized how wrong she had been, not just about him, but about the way she measured success. It wasn't about power or position. It was about how you treated people, even when they had nothing to offer you. She still didn't know that the biggest change was yet to come. The company was quietly planning a new structure, and soon new leadership roles would be announced. The same man she had once mocked for being too quiet was about to become something she could never have imagined: her boss. But for now, she only knew one thing. Life had a strange way of humbling people, and she had just begun to understand its lesson. The news about the company restructuring spread faster than anyone expected. Rumors filled the office halls. Some said new departments would be formed. Others believed a few people might lose their jobs. Everyone was nervous, trying to guess what would happen next. The young man, however, stayed calm as always. He didn't join the gossip or worry about things he couldn't control. He simply continued his work, focusing on what was in front of him. One morning, the manager called for a meeting. The atmosphere was heavy. Everyone sat silently as the manager explained that the company was introducing a new system. Several employees would be promoted, some teams would be reshuffled, and new leadership roles would be assigned. The woman sat up straight, trying to appear confident, though her hands felt cold under the table. She had applied for one of those roles and believed she had a strong chance. As the names were announced, people clapped for each person. Then came the surprise that made the whole room fall silent for a few seconds. The young man's name was called. He had been promoted to assistant manager. He would now be part of the leadership team and oversee several employees, including some who had been there longer than him. The woman blinked, unsure if she heard it right. For a moment, her face froze. She looked at him, sitting just a few seats away, smiling shyly and thanking everyone. People clapped again, but the sound felt distant to her. Her chest tightened as she realized what had just happened. The same person she once laughed at was now her senior. After the meeting, everyone surrounded him to congratulate him. Some did it out of respect. Others just wanted to be polite. The woman stayed at her desk, pretending to be busy. When he walked past her, she managed to say softly, "Congratulations." He smiled and replied, "Thank you. I'll do my best." There was no pride in his tone, just genuine sincerity. Somehow that made it even harder for her to face him. That evening, when the office emptied, she sat there alone, staring at her computer screen. She thought back to the early days, the jokes, the laughter, the small things she had said to make herself feel superior. Now all of it felt foolish. Life had turned in a way she never imagined. Over the next few days, his new role became official. He now had his own small office space, a nameplate on the door, and additional responsibilities. The management trusted him to lead new projects and guide others. He moved into his role naturally, without changing who he was. He still greeted everyone the same way, still helped others, still stayed humble. The woman tried to avoid him whenever possible. She didn't want him to think she was jealous, but deep down she couldn't shake off the discomfort. Her pride was hurt, and she didn't know how to fix it. Every time she saw him leading a meeting or discussing plans with the senior manager, a strange feeling grew inside her. Not just envy, but regret. One morning, the department received new assignments. The woman opened her email and froze. She had been moved to a different team, the one that the new assistant manager would now lead. For a moment, she just sat there staring at the screen. Her heart sank. She didn't know how to face him now that he was officially her boss. When she walked into his office for the first meeting, she felt nervous in a way she hadn't felt in years. He greeted her warmly, just like he did with everyone else. "Good morning," he said with a smile. "I'm glad you're part of this team. I know we can do great work together." She nodded quickly, avoiding eye contact, and took her seat. As the meeting continued, she couldn't help but notice how naturally he handled everything. He didn't act superior or try to show power. He listened carefully, asked for opinions, and made everyone feel included. It was clear why the management had chosen him. He had leadership that didn't come from authority but from respect. After the meeting, as everyone left, she stayed behind. "Can I ask something?" she said softly. He looked up. "Of course," he replied. She hesitated before speaking. "You really think I can contribute here? I mean, I've been struggling lately." He nodded and said calmly, "You have experience, and that's valuable. Everyone has something to improve, including me. But I know you'll do well." His words surprised her. She had expected him to treat her coldly, maybe even remind her of how she once treated him, but he didn't. He spoke to her as an equal, not someone beneath him. She left the office feeling a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. Weeks passed, and she slowly began adjusting to the new structure. She watched how he managed the team, always fair, always composed. When someone made a mistake, he didn't scold them. He helped them fix it. When someone succeeded, he made sure they got the credit. The same kindness he once showed as a junior now shined even brighter as a leader. The woman found herself learning from him without even realizing it. She started adopting his calm approach, speaking to others with more patience and focusing on her own growth instead of competing with others. People in the office began noticing the change in her too. One day a big project came up, one that required late hours and a lot of teamwork. The young boss gathered the team and said, "We'll get through this if we support each other. No one's alone in this." The woman volunteered to take on extra work, surprising even herself. She wanted to prove, not to him but to herself, that she could be better. The long nights of work turned into an unexpected lesson for her. She saw how he never asked others to do something he wouldn't do himself. He stayed late with the team, checked everyone's progress, and even brought coffee for them when they looked tired. The respect people had for him was real. It wasn't forced or fear-based. During one of those nights, as they worked side by side, she finally spoke the words that had been sitting in her heart for months. "You've changed a lot," she said quietly. He looked at her and smiled slightly. "Maybe, but mostly I've learned a lot," he replied. Then he added, "I used to care about proving myself. Now I just want to make a difference." His answer stayed with her long after that night. She realized that while she had been chasing recognition, he had been chasing growth. That was the difference. When the project was finally completed, their team received high praise from the management. Everyone was thrilled. The woman standing next to him during the meeting felt proud, not just of the success but of how far both of them had come. She looked at him and thought, "He deserves this." Later that day, as the team celebrated, someone joked, "Who would have thought the quiet guy from a year ago would be our boss?" Laughter filled the room, but this time it wasn't cruel. It was full of respect and admiration. The woman smiled too, knowing that every word was true. As the office slowly emptied that evening, she stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker. She thought about how life changes when you least expect it. The person you underestimate today might be the one you look up to tomorrow. And sometimes, those you hurt the most are the ones who teach you the greatest lessons. For her, it wasn't just about his promotion anymore. It was about realizing that true strength doesn't come from loud voices or confidence. It comes from patience, humility, and kindness. She had once laughed at him, but now she respected him deeply. And though she didn't say it out loud, she silently promised herself that from that day on, she would treat everyone, no matter their position, with respect. Because life had already shown her how quickly the tables can turn, and she never wanted to be on the wrong side of that lesson again. The days that followed the big project were peaceful. The office atmosphere had changed for the better. People worked with more teamwork and less gossip. The young boss had managed to turn the workplace into a more positive space. His way of leading wasn't loud or controlling. It was gentle but firm. Everyone felt seen, and everyone wanted to do better because of how he treated them. For the woman, things felt different too. She had finally accepted that he had earned his position through hard work and patience. But even though she respected him, there was still a quiet discomfort inside her. She remembered the past, how she had once laughed at him, how she had joined others in treating him like he didn't belong. It was hard to forgive herself for that. One Monday morning, she was called into a meeting with the senior manager. The manager explained that the company was forming a new department and that the young boss would be leading it. She was being transferred under his supervision once again, but this time it was official and permanent. When she left the manager's office, her hands trembled slightly. She had already been working with him, but this was different. Now he was directly responsible for her performance. A strange thought crossed her mind. Would he treat me the way I once treated him? The next day, she walked into the new department. The team was gathered around as he explained their goals and plans. When he noticed her walk in, he smiled politely and welcomed her like everyone else. "Glad to have you here," he said in his calm voice. There was no sarcasm, no hint of revenge, just sincerity. Throughout the first week, she waited for him to show some sign of bitterness, maybe a cold remark or an uncomfortable reminder of the past. But it never came. He treated her with the same respect he gave everyone. If she made a mistake, he helped her fix it. If she did well, he acknowledged it. It confused her. Most people given the chance would have used the situation to get back at her. But not him. The more she saw how fair and kind he remained, the heavier her guilt became. One afternoon, she stayed late to finish some work. Everyone else had left except him. He walked past her desk and asked, "Still here?" She nodded. "Just trying to wrap this up," she said quietly. He smiled slightly and said, "You should go home. You've worked enough for the day." She looked at him, hesitating. There was something she wanted to say, but the words stuck in her throat. He noticed the look on her face and asked gently, "Is everything okay?" She forced a smile and said, "Yes, all good." But inside she wanted to say, "I'm sorry." She wanted to tell him that she regretted everything, that she wished she could take back her words from the past. But she couldn't. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, the new department began to perform better than anyone expected. Their reports were clean, their deadlines were met, and even the senior manager noticed the change. The young boss's name was often mentioned in company emails praising leadership results. The woman started to feel proud to be part of his team. She found herself working harder, not out of fear but out of respect. His presence motivated people in a quiet way. He never raised his voice, never made anyone feel small. Yet everyone wanted to impress him because of how much effort he put into helping them succeed. One day, a problem came up. A client report had errors, and the submission deadline was close. The team panicked. The woman was responsible for that section, and she felt a rush of anxiety. She feared that this mistake would disappoint him. She immediately went to his office to explain. Before she could say much, he stopped her gently. "Don't worry," he said. "Let's look at it together. We'll fix it." They spent the next few hours side by side, checking every line. He didn't blame her once. Instead, he kept encouraging her, saying, "We'll get through it." By the end of the night, they fixed everything, and the report was submitted successfully. When they finally finished, she leaned back and said softly, "You didn't have to stay so late for me." He smiled. "We're a team," he replied. "No one succeeds alone." Something in her heart softened at that moment. She realized that he was not just a good worker or a lucky one, he was a good person, and that made his success even more deserved. A few days later, the senior manager called the team for an announcement. The company had achieved record results and their department was being recognized as the best performing one of the quarter. The room filled with applause. The young boss thanked everyone and made sure to mention the team's effort. He didn't take the credit for himself. After the meeting, the woman found a quiet corner and stood there, lost in thought. She remembered how she had laughed when he first joined, how she had whispered jokes behind his back. Now the same person had stood in front of everyone, praising her and the rest of the team for their work. She felt a lump in her throat. Later that evening, she gathered the courage to knock on his office door. He looked up and smiled. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside, her hands clasped together. For a moment, she didn't know how to start. Then she finally said in a quiet voice, "I wanted to say thank you for everything, for not holding anything against me." He looked at her kindly and said, "There's nothing to hold against anyone. We all grow. We all change." His calm words almost brought tears to her eyes. "I wasn't kind to you back then," she admitted. "I'm not proud of it. You had every reason to treat me the same way, but you didn't. I just want you to know that I'm sorry." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "It's okay," he said softly. "What matters is who we are now, not who we used to be." She nodded, her eyes slightly wet. That moment lifted a heavy weight off her chest. For months she had carried guilt, but his forgiveness made her feel free again. From that day, their working relationship changed completely. There was mutual respect, genuine understanding, and trust. She started looking up to him, not as someone who had simply risen higher, but as someone who had taught her what true leadership meant. Over time, other employees also noticed the bond between them, not a personal one, but one built on shared growth. They became an example of how workplaces can change when people choose kindness over ego. Sometimes, when she looked at him leading meetings or guiding new employees, she thought about how much life could change in just a few years. The same man she once saw as unsure and inexperienced had become a role model to everyone, including her. And though she never spoke about it again deep down, she was thankful that life had given her a second chance. not just to work under him, but to learn from him. Because in the end, she realized that real strength isn't about being above others. It's about lifting others up, even when they once looked down on you. That understanding stayed with her every day. Whenever a new employee joined, nervous and unsure, she was the first to welcome them warmly. She made sure no one in the office felt the way she had once made someone feel. Life had quietly turned its wheel, and through that turn, it had taught her the most important lesson of all. Respect everyone, because time has its own way of balancing everything. Weeks turned into months, and the new department started shining under his leadership. People noticed how well the team worked together, how motivated everyone seemed, and how calm the atmosphere was. He had a way of handling things that made others feel valued. He didn't raise his voice, didn't show off his power, and never tried to remind anyone of his position. Instead, he focused on listening, helping, and guiding. The woman who once laughed at him began to see him differently every day. The same person she once mocked for being quiet and unsure now spoke with confidence. He managed meetings with ease, handled clients smoothly, and earned respect from everyone around. It wasn't just his title that made him admirable. It was how he treated people. He didn't hold grudges. Even though she had given him a hard time in the past, he still treated her like any other member of the team. At first, she felt nervous around him. Every time she had to talk to him, she worried he might remember the old days and finally get his revenge. But he never brought it up. When she made a mistake, he guided her calmly instead of embarrassing her. When she stayed late at the office, he thanked her for her effort. Slowly, her fear turned into guilt. She began to realize how wrong she had been, and how much she had underestimated him back then. One evening, when most of the team had gone home, she stayed back to finish some reports. He walked past her desk and noticed the tired look on her face. "You should go home," he said kindly. "You've done enough for today." She smiled weakly and replied, "I just want to make sure everything's perfect." He nodded. "That's good, but don't overwork yourself. Tomorrow is another day." His words were gentle, not demanding, and that small moment hit her harder than any punishment could. He wasn't trying to make her feel small. He was reminding her that work was important, but people were more important. Over time, she started working differently. She began helping others, sharing her experience with younger employees and treating everyone with kindness. People around the office noticed the change in her behavior. The woman who once used to gossip and laugh at others was now the first to offer help when someone struggled. One day, during a team lunch, the group started talking about how much things had improved under the new manager. Someone said, "He's the best boss we've ever had." Another added, "He makes you want to do better, not because you're scared, but because you feel respected." The woman smiled quietly but didn't join in. She knew those words were true, but she also knew how differently she had treated him before. Later that day, she decided it was finally time to say what had been on her heart for months. After work, she knocked on his office door. He looked up from his laptop and smiled. "Come in," he said. She hesitated for a moment before walking in. "I just wanted to say something," she began softly. "I owe you an apology. I was terrible to you when you first joined. I said things I shouldn't have, and I treated you unfairly. But you've never once made me feel bad about it. You've shown nothing but kindness. I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry." For a few seconds, the room was quiet. He leaned back in his chair, thinking. Then he smiled gently and said, "It's all right. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them." Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but relief. That simple forgiveness meant more than any long lecture or punishment ever could. She nodded and said, "Thank you. You're a better person than I was back then." He chuckled softly. "Maybe, but we all grow in different ways. You've changed too, and that's what really matters." From that day onward, they worked together with genuine respect. Their communication improved, and the department reached new heights. Clients praised their teamwork, and upper management noticed how efficient the team had become. He was soon promoted again, this time to a regional leadership position overseeing multiple branches. When he announced the news, the whole team celebrated. The woman clapped the loudest, proud not just of his success, but also of her own journey toward becoming a better person. Before he left for his new role, she met him one last time and said, "You deserve everything you've achieved. You taught me something I'll never forget." He smiled and replied, "Don't ever underestimate people. Everyone's story is still being written." After he left, the office didn't feel the same. His absence was felt deeply, but his influence remained. The culture he built continued even without him there. People respected each other more, helped one another, and worked with integrity. The woman carried his words like a reminder. Whenever she met a new employee, especially someone quiet or unsure, she made sure to guide them with patience instead of pride. She often shared his story with others, though never mentioning names. She'd say, "Once I worked with someone I didn't respect, and it turned out he was far more capable than I ever imagined. That experience changed me." Years passed, and she too moved into a higher position. She led her own team now, but she led differently, calmly, respectfully, and with empathy. She remembered how it felt to be treated kindly when she didn't deserve it, and she tried to offer that same grace to others. One afternoon, while checking her emails, she received a message from him. It was short but heartfelt. "Just wanted to say I'm proud of how far you've come. Hope you're doing well." She smiled at the screen, feeling grateful for how life had unfolded. She replied, "Thank you. You changed the way I see people and leadership." After sending the message, she leaned back in her chair and thought about the early days. She remembered how she used to laugh at the young man who struggled with simple tasks, never realizing that same person would one day become her boss and her biggest lesson. Life has a strange way of teaching people humility. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes just one powerful moment. For her, that lesson came in the form of a quiet, hard-working colleague who refused to give up or become bitter. His journey showed everyone in that office that success isn't about how loud you are or how quickly you rise. It's about how you treat people along the way. Respect, kindness, and patience always find their way back. In the end, the story of the employee she once laughed at became more than just an office tale. It became a reminder to everyone that tables can turn, and when they do, it's not revenge that defines character. It's grace. And so, life moved on. Both of them continued their journeys, now as better versions of themselves. But deep down, they both knew that their story would never be forgotten. It had taught them and everyone around them that you should never look down on anyone, because the person you mock today might be the one who helps you tomorrow, or even the one you call boss.